Good morning, everyone. It is wonderful to see so many people. We have two wonderful guests to be with us this morning. But before introducing them, I wanted to give a couple of announcements. First, a personal announcement. It's -7 degrees in Gouldsboro. It is freezing cold. As I see the temperature in our house declining, I'm really thinking about people who don't have the money to pay for houses, good houses, or propane that we live on, or food, or prescription drugs, much less for lawyers. So I wanted to start off by thanking all of you for your willingness to help other people clear up their criminal records. They really can't do it without us. As much as we've made it easy, it's still too long, too complicated, and we need everybody's help. Um, we're meeting today at a pivotal point in the development of pardon projects and the services we are offering. The bad news is that we've been very successful. I know that doesn't make any sense, but the backlog is now 8,000 applications, 8,000. And the wait to get to a hearing before the Board of Pardons, 11 years. No one would say that is anywhere close to justice. So we have our work cut out for us. We have to raise our voices. Our clients have to raise their voices. We need to get enough attention so that people who have the authority to make changes make the changes that are necessary to make the system work. Today, we're really focusing on how do we reach other people? How do we reach the people that matter? We've talked about our different goals, and lots of them require attention be paid to the legislature, the Board of Pardons, the governor, the judiciary, and the community. We adopted these last October, and everyone thought they made a lot of sense. But okay, how do we do stuff with a legislature? I don't think I'm a lobbyist. I don't think I do lobbying, but I've learned from our second speaker, that I am a lobbyist. Is that okay? So we're going to be listening to Don Kramer, who is really the dean of the nonprofit bar in Philadelphia, who has educated me since I was a young lawyer, and has educated thousands around the state. But before we get to him, I want to bring in an elected official who has been working on and with pardons for longer than I have, and expungements as well. And that's State Senator Patty Kim. When I first met her a couple of years back, she was, quote, just, unquote, a state rep. And she was elevated to being a senator this past November. She has demonstrated a remarkable commitment to second chances for everyone, but in particular for those without the ability to pay. And I hope you all saw in your inboxes yesterday the video that was taken of the training program that she provided to her entire staff. The hope is that after hearing from her today and from Don, you will feel very comfortable in sharing this with your elected representatives, state rep, state house, state senate, mayor, whoever, commissioners, to try to get them involved with us. So, Senator, thank you very much for joining us this morning. I turn the floor over to you with my thanks for your involvement in all this.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to see everybody here. I started in this crazy business about 13 years ago. And when I was a freshman in the House, I had the privilege of listening to folks who had backgrounds and couldn't get jobs. And after the 6th, 7th, 8th, 12th person who came to me, I thought that this is something I needed to do. So again, I'm a Patty Kim, state senator for Dauphin County. The state capital is in my district, and I have the city of Harrisburg and some suburban areas. And I'm really, really glad to be able to represent. The one most fulfilling thing about my job is not the ribbon cuttings. It's not seeing my bills not get passed over and over again, especially the minimum wage bill, but it's helping re-entrants get their lives back. And I proudly helped with the first clean slate bill with Representative Jordan Harris behind the scenes. But being able to have someone come up to you a bit embarrassed about their past, not feeling a lot of self-worth, and then walking them through either the expungement process or the pardon process through my office and seeing get something that has awaited them for so many years, let's say decades, and to see that come off the record, they're walking with their heads higher, they're lighter, and they have a new life. And I know I'm speaking and preaching to the choir about how rewarding it is, but that is the single most rewarding thing in my office. And so if legislators are hearing this, I've trained my whole team how to walk people through pardons. We've had pardon projects, or rather clinics for people. These folks have so many barriers to cross. They do not need to pay an exorbitant amount of money for attorneys to get this done. Our office pardon project can be helpful and be encouraging and supportive, and again, seeing lives changed. It is so rewarding and so fulfilling. And so I'm so grateful that we're having this clinic. This is like the good news. Like, people think, with government, everything is so complicated and hard to get through. But with a little bit of help, we can see people get these charges dropped and live a new life. And so I am so grateful for this project today, the seminar. Let's spread the good news and change people's lives. Thank you. Thank you, Toby, very much for having me.
Senator, it's a real joy to have you. We have reached out to the senator, talking with the kinds of things we want to achieve. She has told us she's ready to help when she can. And we haven't really done that yet. But my hope is that after today, we can come up with a plan for how we as an organization are going to provide that kind of help to people. Okay, so now back to a little bit of business before the next speaker. I'm going to be sending out a fillable PDF, fillable thanks to Lori Siegel in Monroe County, asking you for what's going on with your pardon project, or if you're just with a single organization, your pardon hub. I have two law students who will be actually calling everybody. And please don't make them have to chase you. If you are the person who I have down is heading up your pardon hub or pardon project, and I have it wrong, it's somebody else, answer their email, answer their call, and tell them who the right person is. But as you've seen from the draft I circulated earlier, this is asking about, okay, how are we doing out there? This isn't just to find out which reps and which senators have you worked with. It's also to acquire the data we need in order to go to funders to say, we as a statewide organization deserve support. This is something that you should feel confident in giving us money for coordinators, because we found that really a volunteer coordinator is wonderful as long as they last, but when they tire, well, we've already lost a couple pardon projects because of that. So be thinking about when the questionnaire comes around, fill it out, send it back when you can. It'll save us trying to chase you down. But be thinking about the issues and the people you're serving, and how do we capture what we are doing to help them in ways that are meaningful to people who have resources who could help us. And that includes taking cell phone videos and getting short statements about who they are and what they're doing. Okay, enough of preaching to the choir. I'm now pleased to introduce Don Kramer. You can see on the blue screen behind him that he is the founder and editor of Nonprofit Issues. If you don't subscribe to it and you are at all involved in nonprofits, on a board member, serving them or whatever, subscribe to it. It's cheap. It comes in your email box every week, and you get lots of information about how nonprofits really need to operate. But I invited him today to talk with us because we are having to get the word out to people who matter. Lobbying. What is lobbying, and should we be doing it? And what are the rules about it? So Don answered those questions for me when I was a young lawyer. and he's a wonderful mentor and counselor. So I asked him to come in, and here he is. Don, thanks for joining us.
Morning, and thanks, Toby. Appreciate the introduction. Anybody who wants to sign up for the free emails of nonprofit issues, you can easily do it on the site, nonprofitissues.com. I usually start these kinds of discussions with going back a little bit farther, because when Toby talks about lobbying issues only apply to nonprofit charitable organizations. And I think that there's a lot of nomenclature in this field, which is difficult. And my point is that if you don't know what box you're in, you don't know what rules apply. Nonprofit itself is a concept of state law, which means that all the money stays inside the organization as long as it functions. There's nobody owns a nonprofit. Nobody gets dividends out of a nonprofit. So I say all the money stays inside, can be used to pay reasonable compensation for services rendered, but that's the limitation of it. When we say nonprofit, we tend to mean exempt from federal income tax. Section 501C of the tax code, which has most but not all of the exempt organizations, has 29 different classifications. The biggest one is 501c3, which is charitable organizations. But even charitable organizations are broken down between public charities and private foundations, and there are different rules that apply to them as well. The key thing about C3 charities, as opposed to all the other exempt organizations under 501c, the basic difference is there are two specific limitations. One is they may not participate at all in an election at any level of government, either for or against any candidate. And two is they may not spend a substantial amount of time on lobbying. Now, the question then is, what is lobbying? Lobbying is really taking a position on identifiable or pending legislation, which is being considered by a legislative group at any level. So I was looking at your goals here. There are a whole lot of goals here about legislation, of things that would require changes to Pennsylvania state law. If you are talking either to the public, trying to get them to support or oppose some of those changes, or you're talking to Senator Kim about voting for some of these things, that will be lobbying for a 501c3 organization. Most of the rest of this stuff is not lobbying. Dealing with the Board of Pardons and all its procedures and all those kinds of issues, that does not require a change in law. So that is not lobbying. When you're asking the governor to speed up his decisions, that doesn't change the law. So that's perfectly okay. When you're asking courts to help speed up the process, that's also fine. That is not lobbying. And most of the community work you're doing, particularly when you're helping people, coaching people on how to do it, running seminars and workshops on that kind of issue, none of that is lobbying. So only if you're doing this through a 501c3 organization does it matter. Most of you, I understand, are here sort of as individuals and not as representatives of any particular organization. Citizens don't have any limitation on the amount of lobbying that they can do. The one thing that I told Toby, which is not actually legislation, but is a legislative action, is if you are opposing or supporting candidates for the Board of Pardons, who have to be approved by the state Senate, then that is lobbying activity because it's a legislative act. The IRS has ruled, for example, with regard to Supreme Court justices who are being confirmed or not by the U.S. Senate, that is a lobbying activity. Not electioneering, because they're not being elected, but it is a lobbying activity. How much lobbying can you do? You can do something that is not substantial. What is that? Nobody knows. If it's not measured by money, Toby tells me he's not being paid for his role as executive director of the Pardon Project, but he is spending a lot of time. and a lot of effort. And he's trying to organize a lot of volunteers to take actions. But as I say, most of the actions that you're taking are not lobbying activities. I always have argued, however, that if you're not lobbying, you're not doing your job, because so much of what we are dealing with are the effects of public policy. And all this pardon stuff is clearly the effect of public policy. But I always sort of give two examples. One is the fact that we do not have elderly, poor people sleeping under bridges today because we have Medicare and Social Security, two critical public policy issues. We have women who are earning hundreds of thousands of dollars playing professional sports these days because 45 or 50 years ago, we passed Title IX, which said that women had to have equal opportunity in college sports. Can you imagine whether the Girl Scouts or the girls' clubs could have created the talent that we have created over the last half century by having that single change in the statute, which made, all those opportunities available for women that were not there before? I always tell two stories about lobbying, which I think are really important. One is the story about the apocryphal story about the nonprofit executives who were sitting out on the riverbank in lunchtime during the summer conference of their organizations. And when they're sitting there eating their box lunch, a baby comes floating down the river. And the first executive goes down and pulls the baby out of the water. They go back and they're finishing up their sandwich. Half a dozen babies come floating down the river. And the second one goes down and teaches the babies how to swim. And then they go back and they're eating the brownie, which is in the bottom of every box lunch. And 100 babies come floating down the river. And the third executive gets up and starts running up the river. And the others one say, "Where are you going? We got to save these babies." Third one says, "I'm going to find out why these babies are coming down the river so I can stop it." And that's what legislation does. That critical thing, what is the purpose of your organization? Are you pulling the people out of their situation? Are you teaching them how to deal with it? Or are you trying to prevent it? And my view is that if you're not trying to prevent it with the legislative levers that are available to do that, you aren't doing your job. My second story is a real story told by Carol Tracy, who was then the president of the Women's Law Project in Philadelphia, who spent $15,000 on a lobbying campaign in 1997 when they were dealing with a Welfare to Work Act that was passed in the legislature in Harrisburg. They had one change that they were able to get in the definition of how child support was calculated for low-income women, which made the difference because they were able to get $15 million more a year of welfare-type payments to their clientele, low-income women in Pennsylvania. And I always ask where you could have gone with a $15,000 grant writer to get $15 million a year for the foreseeable future for your clients. And obviously, there's nowhere you could have done that. I always tell that story, and I told that story one afternoon when I was teaching out at Penn. And I went down that evening to the Women's Law Project annual fundraiser. And I told Carol, I told your story again. And she says, "Well, I can make it better because the feds changed the regulations. I got the state to change the regulations. Now it's $54 million a year because they knew where the levers were." And my view is if you're not trying to pull those levers, you probably aren't doing your job. So the the argument here is that even if you're with a 501c charity, you should be paying attention to this because it does deal exactly with the issues that you're dealing with your clientele, your constituents, the people you're trying to serve. One other thing just to say about public charities versus private foundations. Private foundations are not permitted to lobby directly. They can lobby on what's called self-defense issues. If Congress says we ought to raise the required payout for private foundations from 5% to 7%, they can lobby on that because that directly affects their own activities and what they can do. But if they're a private foundation interested in health care, they can't lobby on Social Security, they can't lobby on Medicaid, they can't lobby on the kind of issues that were coming up in the One Big Beautiful Bill last summer. But what they can do is they can support public charities with general operating expense money. And if they give you general operating expense money, you can use that for lobbying. Or if you have a project which includes some lobbying, but not all of the lobbying, they can fund that project up to the entire amount of the non-lobbying amount. So, for example, if you have a $100,000 project, $80,000 is spent on training people to how to get pardons, and $20,000 is spent on trying to lobby for change in the pardon law. They can fund $80,000 of that, and none of it is deemed to be a lobbying expense by them. Two private foundations can fund it equally, and neither one of them is deemed to have spent any money on lobbying. So there's a lot of material out there. There's a lot of ways that people can be helpful. I've given Toby a ready reference page from my newsletter, which he will send to you if you wish to see it, which spells out some of these advantages. But in general, most of what you're doing isn't lobbying. And even if you're doing lobbying in most charities, that's quite okay. The limit is somewhere between 10, 15%, 20% maybe of your activity. There is a way to base it all on expenditures, but most people don't do that. And so if it's based on activity, then if 10% or more of your activity is lobbying, you may want to dial it back a little bit. But most of what you're doing, most of what these goals are simply not lobbying. And if you're doing it as an individual, there's no limitation on it whatsoever. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about that. Hopefully we've given you some sense of comfort that you can do the kinds of things you're talking about doing.
Don, that's really wonderful. I want to make sure that I've heard one thing right. You keep referring to 501c organizations. Most of us are affiliated with 501c3s, but I know there's some bar associations that are 501c4s or 501c something else's.
Yes.
So are the bar associations covered by the same comments you just made if they're C4s?
No, because it only applies to C3 charities.
Okay.
C4s have unlimited amount of lobbying activity. They can even support candidates as long as it's not a primary activity. There's litigation going on what that means. But C4s are all these substitutes for PACs, which were created after the Citizens United case in 2010, I think it was. And they're spending a lot of money supporting candidates.
Okay, and how about C6s?
C6s are not covered by this either. None of the other Cs, and they go down to 29, are covered by these limitations. C3s are by far the largest group, and that's what we tend to equate with nonprofit. But that's why I say you need to know what box you're in, because it's only C3s that are subject to these lobbying limitations.
Wonderful. Now, I will tell people I've not been reading the chat because I've been working on some other things to gear up. If anyone has a question for Don that he has not already answered, please unmute yourself, introduce yourself, say what county you're from, and then ask away.
Mike Carroll here, Don,
Yes.
Philadelphia County. I'm on the board of another organization that represents prisoners. It's called Pennsylvania Institutional Law Project. Can I still wear a different hat and proceed as an individual without a problem?
Yes.
Okay, good. That's all.
Take off your other hat.
Yeah.
Put on your individual hat. Don't use your other stationery. Don't use your other office.
What about this hair? Can I do anything about that?
Well, that's your problem. I can't deal with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things I learned from talking with Don is that individuals can do whatever they want. For a moment there, I flashed up the Legal Services Corporation requirements for lobbying. And so if you are an LSC funded organization, they're pretty strict, but they don't apply to individuals. I mean, if you're working in your office using office equipment during office hours, yeah, you can't do any of that stuff. But if you're operating from home on your own equipment, on your own time, you can do anything you want. So if anyone wants a copy of the LSC regs that I pulled from online, I can certainly send them to you. I checked with IOLTA. IOLTA's requirements are nowhere near as strict as LSC. If you want to do it, do it. You can even do it from the office, as long as you don't use your office email address or I guess this is about all, just the office email address. But I can send you the IOLTA regulations as well. I think, honestly, IOLTA expects us all to be doing a little bit of lobbying because they understand that the ability to change the law affects way more individuals who are eligible for IOLTA service. So again, I can send you those. You can send me an email. You can put it in chat and I'll get it to you. All right. Any other questions for Don? Please ask away. This is an amazing opportunity.
I just want to emphasize that lobbying in the tax context is a very narrow term. It doesn't cover litigation. It doesn't cover education. It doesn't cover dealing with regulations, doesn't cover dealing with school boards, which don't pass laws. It is a very limited term. And the vast majority of things that are on your, goals are not at all lobbying.
Don, thanks very, very much. Really appreciate you coming in this morning and helping us with these things.
Okay, well, good luck with your work.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, so I do want to get back to the goals for a second. And this is by way of an update in some things. The legislature is in the moment working on filling the vacancy for the medical expert position. It's been vacant since November. About 2 weeks ago, a name was floated to the senators, and the individual, Dr. John O'Brien, has started meeting with key senators who are on judiciary and appointments committees. I understand that many organizations have written letters of protest and asked for deep consideration of who this candidate is and whether he brings to the Board of Pardons what the Board of Pardons needs at this critical point in time. And I'll be sharing at least 3 of those letters, one that I wrote, one that was written by the Pennsylvania Defenders Association, and one that was written by the the Pardon Project Steering Committee. I also understand that there's been a request for other names. I don't know who the request came from, but I think it's come from the governor's office. So if you are aware of a doctor of medicine, psychiatrist, or psychologist whom you think would be a good member of the Board of Pardons, however you define that, you can share the name with me. I can share it with the others who have asked for this information. But if it's a legitimate, honest call for other names, maybe the candidate we promoted won't make it. Maybe the candidate that came over 2 weeks ago won't make it. Okay. This is really important to us because this person will sit for 6 years, sit in judgment of thousands of candidates. So now is the time to move on that. The second priority we had was to reduce from 70 to 40 the age when a court can expunge convictions. This becomes even more important now because there is an 11,000 person backlog. So what would this really do? First of all, it looks like a dramatic cutback, right? From 70 to 40. Oh my God, we're cutting it in half. But we're targeting the relief on people who are in their 40s, who have jobs, families, and a real need for higher incomes so they can support their families, put money aside for college and everything else. The law includes a 10-year, no problem record. That means from the moment they turn 30, if they're 40 when they apply, they have to have completed their sentence, and they can't have been arrested or subject to any kind of carceral control. That's 10 years of nothing bad being out in our community. And the scientific data are for recidivism that 40 is the age when recidivism drops off heavily. We have academic citations for that. We have experts ready to testify about that. And it also focuses on the population that is most apt to have broken the law, teenagers and 20-year-olds. So if those people committed a crime before they were 30 and haven't done anything in 10 years since then, that's the population we're trying to serve. Now, there's one risk to all of this we all ought to appreciate, that instead of going to the Board of Pardons, it goes down to the county court for an expungement petition. That puts an awful lot of power in the hands of the judges and the district's attorney. That may or may not be fair to people, but that's what the law has always intended, is that expungements be handled by the local court. So I'm hopeful that the Pennsylvania District Attorney Association will be supportive of the law. What we've written into the draft is that any petition for pardon that has been filed and accepted by the Board of Pardons can be sent to the county court, where it would be received, docketed, and treated as an expungement petition without further action by the individual. This would avoid the necessity of having to hire a lawyer and file a petition and incur those fees for however many cases the person has. So that's what's going on in that side of things. But it also proposes that this remand petition, if you'll consider it as a lawyer would, that can't happen over the objection with the individual, or more precisely, it can only happen with the petitioner's consent. So they'll have the choice: wait for 11 years or try to get this resolved within 6 months. So there are real advantages to everybody in the system of trying to take the pressure off of the Board of Pardons and give the power back to the community that was hurt by the crime in the first place, and the people who have the best evidence about what this person has been doing ever since and why they ought to be able to have their criminal history record expunged. The number 3 on there, the second piece of legislation that we will certainly be trying to find sponsors for and bringing to the House and the Senate, is to require that the recommendations by the Board of Pardons be made within 1 year of filing. Actually, it's now 2. 1 year of filing, which they're already taking about a year to actually get it filed, for pardon applicants whose crime did not involve a human victim and occurred more than 10 years before filing. The 10 years being the same that's in the statute. But this one is the crime occurred more than 10 years ago. Those are where the data are for recidivism, where the crimes occurred. But what this would do, if the bill were introduced, would be to allow the legislature to examine what's going on at the Board of Pardons, trying to understand what they're doing to solve this issue or what they're not doing to solve the issue. This puts a spotlight on them, a spotlight that they don't have because it's been behind closed doors and doing whatever they want. So there is attraction to this one as well, even if the legislature does not adopt this new 2-year idea. I'll tell you that the 2 years comes from 2 unanimous recommendations given to, actually it was 1 year, given to the governor by the state Workforce Development Board, an advisory board of business and government leaders that meets every quarter and discusses ideas about how to expand the workforce. So they see the expungement of criminal records as really necessary. And in a meeting I had a week ago with the general counsel to the PennDOT, he was bewailing the fact that they have all this construction money and they're trying to give it to contractors to do construction on transportation-related things, and the contractors can't find the workforce for it. Well, this is an easy fix for that. And he is trying to figure out whether or not PennDOT itself can issue a new program, start some regulations that would allow people with criminal records to participate in these projects. Nothing but goodness there, but the law may actually prohibit it. So fingers are crossed that he finds some creative way. And finally, I want to note numbers 6 and 7. Obtain adequate funding for the whole pardon system. And 7, fund pardon project coordinators at $10,000 a year with a matching grant requirement. It's this latter one that, if we could get it adopted, would fund money for any pardon project that has a coordinator, with the obligation, though, that best efforts be used to go out into the community of funders and try to get a matching grant for your nonprofit activities helping low-income people. That could be remarkable. We tried it kind of softly 2 years ago. We couldn't do it this past year, because of all that was going on in Washington. But there may be the opportunity now to have elected officials be thinking about these things as ways of helping their constituents. If there are 8,000 people waiting, that's a lot of elected representatives now that could be approached about this issue. So I bring this all back to the purposes of, okay, what are we doing? What can we do? What should we do in the areas of lobbying? And the most important ones for us to think about are Senate and the House in Pennsylvania. One of the things that's going to be requested in this survey is, all right, so what have you done to contact those people? Who are your elected representatives, and have you reached them? And I want to introduce the 2 law students who I referred to early on. One is Brian Fenton. The other is Jana Zafar, both from Drexel Law School. If you would both uncloak yourself, unmute yourself, and say hello so people know who you are, so that when you call them, they know who they're talking to. So, Brian, are you there?
I am. Good morning. It is nice to meet you all. My name is Brian Fenton. I am a 2L at Drexel Law School. I am very excited to be doing this type of work. I was a social worker for 10 years, so this is right up my alley. I'll be reaching out to you all within the next few days or so, and look forward to collaborating. Thank you.
That's what I like to hear. Next few days. Well, give them a little time. We'll reach out to them next week, and I'll be circulating the fillable PDF at the end of this program, so you can have it and see what the questions are. Jana, are you on the line too? Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I am. Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Jenna. I'm also a second-year law student with Brian at Drexel. I'm born and raised here in Philly, so this work is really important to me, to be able to give back to the community and overall state that I grew up in. And then before law school, I spent a few years as a paralegal at the Defender Association. So I'm very familiar with this work, but I'm happy to be taking a further step into it and making a change in the pardon system. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jana. Wonderful. All right. So Toby has talked too long, as is my wont. You've now met a couple people who are involved in this effort. So let me open it up for anyone who has had any reactions, suggestions, fears, questions, whatever. This is a community action, community organizing effort. So hearing from people who have ideas or have seen the film that we just did and circulated it to legislators, please unmute yourself and speak your mind. Add to this add to this conversation.
Toby, if I could just circle back to the video that you mentioned earlier, that YouTube video. It's the first time I've seen it. I've watched it 3 times already since yesterday. Because for me, being someone who's not in the system or in the court system, it is so helpful to hear that information again and again, because that educates me better and makes me more confident when I go out to speak to these folks. So highly recommend it no matter what level of understanding you have, because just the reminders and the encouragement, it's wonderful. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Lori. Wonderful. Thanks for watching it.
Oh, yeah. Can I bring up something that you have looking ahead for next month?
No, not quite yet, if it's okay.
Oh.
All right, fine. I'll trust you. Go for it.
Well, because I just had this phone call yesterday regarding someone who was trying to apply for a pardon. She did come to the clinic, and we're trying to assist her. Her challenge is unpaid fees and the court costs. She's done restitution, that's all finished. The challenge that she's facing is for almost the exact amount of what her fees are. There is currently a case that she has pending regarding a judgment on someone that owes her money. And it's almost the exact amount. So her question, she called me yesterday and said, like, why can't both of these move quicker so that I can get that money so I can pay my fees so that when my application is reviewed, I can say, yes, everything's clear. So when I saw that for next month, because I just got the phone call yesterday.
All right, so you are moving ahead too rapidly. But let me give a quick answer. I've circulated before and will circulate again the form of motion to waive fines, fees, and costs, and it's allowed for a complete waiver. The judge could also put you in a payment plan, but if you don't have the money, you're not going to make the payment plan, and then you're in default of that. We've actually filed one now in Luzerne County on behalf of a client who lives up here in Wayne County. I'll be circulating that motion. And at next month's meeting, that attorney will be telling us what happened because it's been scheduled for a hearing before the judge the week before our meeting. In terms of the court accepting, whatever proceeds you might have from a lawsuit, if they accept it, they accept it. The question is, what is the court willing to do? And it may well just be that you need the lawyer to file the motion if she's income eligible. If she's not income eligible, she won't get it waived. And she might go on a pardon, on a payment plan that might allow her to make the first payment upon receipt of the proceeds of that other judgment. So there may be a way to do it that way. Vincent, go ahead. Your hand is up. Ask away.
Good morning, Toby. My concern, obviously, is as you introduced an 11-year backlog to get application to the pardon board. Working with people right now, that seems to be a very discouraging obstacle to get a hurdle to get people over. How do you suggest that we go out now and recruit additional people to sign on to try to get an application into the pardon board, and telling them that, there may be an 11-year wait before you even get to the pardon board? I'm at a standstill as to why I would want to go out and recruit more people to try to get a pardon.
I think that's an important statement, Vincent, for you to send to your state rep and your state senator. Just exactly that. And I hope everybody who is a pardon coach will consider doing the same thing. Our folks need to know that justice is not happening. And it's up to them to change the law, to kick the Board of Pardons in the butt. I have heard that the lieutenant governor has said to someone that there's nothing he can do, that it's up to the legislature. Of course, that's not so. We just gave him 7 pages of recommendations for what the Board of Pardons can do. But if he's saying it's up to the legislature, then let's tell the legislators that the lieutenant governor is saying that and help have them respond. Here's what I would recommend you say to the client. It'll take you 2 hours to apply. You're going to be getting in line. We have a statewide organization and we have state officials who are working to expedite this process. The goal is to have it done far more speedily. And when that happens, not if, when that happens, you got to be in line so that your pardon can be granted so quickly. So the cost is little, 2 hours. The faith is high that we'll actually be able to deliver on some of these hopes. But we got to, again, get back to telling folks in the legislature that this is really required. I have the same situations with the people I counsel. And Vincent, there's just no way around it. You got to be open with them. But in the meantime, if they're being told no, tell them to document all the times they're being told no. If they're having achievements despite their records, tell them to document it And then you can help send that in with their pardon application, with their Board of Pardons number or their application number, adding it to the file and the reasons that they ought to expedite consideration of this person. Remember, one of the things we've asked for is for the secretary to be given discretion on accelerating more people. And you know Shelley, she's been in the system for 15 years. She knows a need when she sees one. She appreciates the need for speed. So I think that the Board of Pardons staff, which is overwhelmed but doing an absolutely incredible job keeping up with as many of these as they can, I think they would really welcome us joining in this fight with them, trying to change the rules. So that's the best I can offer, Vincent. Carol McCormick, you're next.
Hi. Sorry, my camera's not working. I don't have any real I just wanted to let you guys know that we have two people coming up in February 12th for their hearings, and their applications went in on the 2022 and 2023. So I was excited to see that they went through so quickly. I did not work on their applications at the time. I'm from Lackawanna County, but just wanted to share that because
that's great news,
that's
Carol.
two of our people, and hopefully everything will go well.
Yep. Make sure that you share with them the 2 recordings that have been made by the Pardon Project Steering Committee about how to prepare for their hearing.
Yep. I've shared some stuff.
Excellent. And we have hearings coming up in February, as you just said. If they're not on the first day, have them watch so they can learn from it. But as a matter of historical record, back in 2022, we were just beginning the pardon projects around the different counties, and the backlog was 3 years, and then it crept up to 4 years, and then it's crept up to 5 years. And so the people that we'll be seeing have been applying in 2022, maybe 2023, but they're really 2021, 2022. When most of you who are on the Zoom, weren't doing your work yet. They're getting through. And my bet is the board will do what it's done before and basically recommend 80% of the people they've seen because they're out in the community doing good stuff as best as they can. But that 80% is another factor when you're talking to legislators. How can you make people wait for a hearing when 80% of them are going to end up being recommended for a pardon? I mean, that's tragic. That's what a waste of energy and time and talent and potential in their own communities. It's 80%. So again, another thing we can talk about to our legislators when we speak to them. Anybody else who has some comment or question?
Toby, this is Marcia Metcalf from Crawford County. I have a question, which is there any distinction or any difference in the time for people getting expedited review? Do we even have expedited review anymore?
Yes, there is a program that the board adopted in July of 2023. It is on our website, but I can circulate it again for everybody, where they defined cases that would be expedited. If you have one conviction for a minor offense, small amounts of marijuana or small retail theft, and your conviction was 5 years ago and you've been a good boy or girl since, that can be expedited. You have to wait 10-year period if you have one crime that's basically a small category of offenses, certainly not the yucky crimes, but small category. And you can be expedited if it's been 15 years since your more than one conviction. This makes no sense for somebody whose crimes originated in addiction. If their clean date is more than 7 years ago, the likelihood they'll ever commit another crime is really low. So the rules they set up were designed to be, I think, a test case. We had asked the lieutenant governor to report on how many people had come through the pipeline, through that accelerated program, and how long it was taking. You remember he did not answer those questions and said he wasn't prepared to. I've asked for the information again, and I'll share it if I get it. But in the meantime, there is a program. I guarantee that the staff of the Board of Pardons is looking for it. And when they see somebody who qualifies, they are notified right away by the secretary that they are qualifying for this. When they get that questionnaire, I don't know, but I've seen the questionnaire. It's pretty much the same as we used a couple years ago, but that is the procedure. It's just taking 3 years to get there.
So that I understand that. My question is, are these really going through any faster? I mean, are they 3 years or are they also in the 11-year category?
No, they're going through in 3 years. That the
Okay.
secretary told me that back in October. She is really on top of this. She knows what's going on in getting pardon applications to her board. One of the problems we have going forward, of course, is they only have 4 members, and if it's 2-2, that's denied because you need a majority, and that means all the people who are denied with 2 votes may be asking for reconsideration. So that's going to clog the system even more. But it's building to a point that no reasonable person can say, this is good enough for Pennsylvania, especially in a state where the governor's motto is, we get shit done. This doesn't fly.
Thanks, Toby.
Yep. No, thank you for your work. And I should tell everyone that Marcia's been working with her colleagues in Crawford County for several years on Crawford Clean Slate, and they've done a remarkable job. And I think they've actually cultivated some good relationships with their district attorney, and that's really important as well. Okay, anybody else? And last call before I ask Zach Kiesling if he has anything to report from the Pardon Project Steering Committee. No, he's not online. All right, so let me tell you what I know that he has wants to be advertised. First, there is a statewide meeting on February 4th. It's on the calendar. It's got the Zoom. February 4th from 5:30 to 7. This is a call for as many people who have lived experience in the criminal justice system of Pennsylvania to be on the call, to be talking about the things that we're trying to achieve. This is great for all of us as advocates to try to do. It's powerful for the people themselves who are suffering under this bias, this stigma, this inability to come forward and say, these are the problems we have. And that meeting is going to be one where we hope we'll get so many more people. And one of the questions that the 2 students will be asking you about is, okay, give us the names of some people. We want 2 from each county minimum so that we can be sure that we are speaking to them and their constituents and the organizations with whom they work. So please be thinking about that and invite folks to that steering committee meeting. The second thing that I know we're going to be announcing is April is Second Chances Month. Okay, let's take them at their word. Pennsylvania wants to give second chances to people. Fine, prove it. So every organization, whether you're a pardon hub, a nonprofit, a pardon project that's countywide, what are you going to be doing in April? We have the film Pardon Me by Suja Moore, which is continuing to win awards. I mean, it's incredible what this person has done with his first ever documentary short. He is going all around the state talking about this issue. We are trying to get people who are living under the stigma of criminal records, people who have applied for pardons, people who have received pardons, to show up at the screenings and talk about it. We are really encouraging state elected officials, whether they're statewide or local, to come talk. One of the first that was ever done was in York County, where the DA there chaired a panel involving somebody who was head of economic development for the county. And that DA, David Sunday, is now the Attorney General. So he knows what's going on here. And that's why I'm hopeful that the Attorney General, as a sitting member of the Board of Pardons, will recognize the imperative to do something here and deliver justice, for these are people who have acknowledged and owned their past, reformed, and been redeemed. Accountability and redemption was what he talked about that night in York County. That's what he's talking about these days. He talked about it in his inauguration speech. That's what we're hoping that he will follow through with us on this. So those 2 things, planning for April and getting your clients to actually show up and start raising their own voices, not just our own, are critical things for us as we look forward to this year. This could be the year when we actually drive change, because we will get a new member, because the backlog is too steep, because we have so many more elected representatives paying attention. We have 6 months. We got to do what we can do. And that's why this has been focused so much on how do we raise our voices together.